Hi, good morning, Teresa. How are you today?
Good, I'm great. Thank you, Belinda. It's lovely to be here with you today.
It's absolutely fabulous. So we have a little bit of a delay, but it's Africa, so we're just going to work through it and we'll just embrace the challenges. And I guess that's what this crucial COVID conversation is all about, right?
Absolutely.
Embracing the crisis and the challenges. So this is a small thing. All right, Teresa Richardson, and you are actually in the fairest of all capes today, which is Cape Town, right? That's where you're dialing in from?
Yes, absolutely. And I love it here. Haven't lived here for all that long, but absolutely loving being in Cape Town. Yeah.
Wow. Yeah, no kidding. So for those of you that's just tuned in, listening and tuning into our vibe, Teresa and I met through a wonderful mutual friend and a beautiful mutual interest as well. We share the same amazing yoga teacher or instructor, whatever you want to call it. A very good friend of ours that's got this amazing retreat and yoga center based in KwaZulu-Natal. And if you want to know more about her, there is a crucial COVID conversation as well with Jen, so feel free to listen to that. So we've met and obviously connected, and it is my absolute pleasure to welcome Teresa today. So Teresa helps businesses affect positive change in their behavior, action, and attitudes, specifically in the workplace. And Teresa, you are allowing the people to use their strengths to really create a culture of trust, enhance communication, and increase productivity. Wow, isn't that a mouthful? And how amazing that you do that. We also share, of course, another passion and another interest, which is industrial psychology, human resources, and really doing the stuff that you are actually consulting on at the moment. And you've created this amazing business around that as well. So before I go in and just share a little bit about your bio, I just want to put on record, I could never do Teresa's background justice. And I've said to her off camera, if I miss anything, I mean, she's going to absolutely have to just jump in and share more information about that as well. So you're really driven by empowering teams and inspiring managers and motivating leaders as such to create self-awareness and through that creative process and empowering process, achieve greater productivity. I mean, that's a mouthful in itself, and I'm sure that's a full-time job in so many ways. So you have this amazing career and you've experienced this firsthand, obviously, through 35 years. Wow, I take my hat off to you within the travel industry, 30 of these with a leading international company. And I'm sure you're going to elaborate a bit more about that. And you were at the helm of really this group and making sure that they are focused on productivity growth and really expanding internationally, which, by the way, that's the third connecting point for us. I mean, we really do have a lot in common. I mean, we both come from the tourism background, and we've really had interesting experiences on both sides as the agent, travel agent, and you being in the head of that, and also for me on the other side being in the service and being an operator presenting services in the South Pacific. But so tell me a little bit more about, I guess as a start, there is so much from your background and experience, and currently you have your own business. Maybe just give us a little tidbit of what you currently focus on, Teresa. I mean, you've got this elaborate career doing behavioral stuff, amazing experience within the travel and tourism sector, but you have clients across the board, right? So just tell me a little bit more about your own business right now and what you are doing.
Well, it's interesting that, we're talking here about challenges and how it is during COVID, because what I do, that's been actually quite a big focus of what we've been concentrating on. And really what I do is I work with people's behavior, with their personalities, and I really help them to bring the best out of that. Because after having a career in as a corporate CEO and working with people, having to manage people, having to direct people, having to report to people, it's always been something to me that isn't it just amazing how you can get so much more from people if people connect. Like, what makes people connect? How can you get more from people? And isn't it just so limiting for companies when they have a team that are totally unhappy? You can't get to the bottom of why they're unhappy. No one gets along with anyone, and the productivity level goes right down. So for me, it was always interesting to really try and understand people and understand how to manage them, but then also realizing that you can't use one way that fits all. Nothing is a one hat fits all. So in this work that I've done for probably the last 10 or 11 years now, it was about understanding the fundamentals and the primary styles, understanding how they communicate, what their fears are, how to get the best out of them, how to really, really get them to feel heard and understood. And then to just see, like, wow, you know, people that misunderstood each other, that would never have spoken to each other previously before this work, are now getting along like a house on fire. And so for me, I just elaborated more and more on that. And basically what I do is I go into businesses. It usually starts with the CEOs and senior management, where you go in and take a brief of how everything's working in their team, that specific team, which is the high-level management team. And there's always issues. There's always issues because people that are in those positions are, you know, pretty forceful, pretty hard. They want results. They push quite hard. And then they have people in that management team, that the red tape people that need to make sure that all the I's are dotted and the T's are crossed, you know, and there's a lot of conflict there, but they don't really understand why. So I do a little session with them. I use a behavioral tool, an analytical tool. I get an idea of where they are and where things might be limiting for them, and I do it through a workshop. And it just gets them to understand in practical terms, because you know what usually happens is if people get a report or something telling them who they are, they don't understand the background of it. They never remember it, and it goes into their drawer and they never look at that report again.
That's right.
And what I wanted to do was develop workshops where you can give them real life examples of what is working, and particularly in their own business. I can immediately say, well, this is probably happening here. And it usually is exactly that. And so you make it into something that they understand and they can take away with them, and they can use it forever in their life without ever looking at that report again.
Wow,
so
powerful.
Then usually what happens is, you know, the top level of management will say, look, we've got to do this for the rest of our team. And then so it goes on throughout the team. I do special training for sales teams, because again, there's so many sales methods out there of how to sell, how to drive a sale, but you cannot sell the same way to every person. If you understand the dynamics of the different personalities, you'll be able to quickly identify what category they fall in and how you would best be, you know, dealing with a person like that, selling to them and how they like to buy. So there's a lot of different areas that I work in, but as I say, I think the practical training is the fun part of it, because this work is really about accentuating the positives, capitalizing on everyone's positives, rather than trying to improve or be good at something that you probably are never going to improve. Well, I shouldn't say never, but rather concentrate on what you're good at, where your strengths are, capitalize on that. Because when you take your eye off that ball and you're trying so hard to either be someone else or do something that's not doesn't come naturally to you, your great strengths start to drop. And so what you end up doing is not being great at anything. And it's important that you know where to focus on and what sort of things, what environment is best for you, what type of person you, how you like to be managed, all that sort of thing. So it's all about the people. And I always say there's no more valuable asset in any company than their people. So yeah, that's just in a nutshell what I do.
That is incredible, and absolutely agree with everything whatever she just said. I repeat that. So that's great, because this is now I'm getting excited, because for me, it's interesting that you have said, so let's get back to how the crucial COVID conversations and really kind of my evolving back to doing more consulting. So last year when the COVID crisis hit and I was in the middle of being stuck abroad, and I realized, which is exactly the stuff that you talked about, that I'm going to have to diversify myself again and look at those transferable skills to be able to say, okay, so what do I have? What can I use during this crisis? And I chose at that time to actually try and use it to help other businesses like you deal with the COVID crisis. And through this wonderful process, I became a business advisor through New Zealand Business Link Pacific, and there was some funding available for us in the Pacific. And I was able to actually take some of these skills that I had tucked in a box, and tourism came on top of it. So I had to unpack it and find it again, and then really engage with local businesses in the tourism sector, or in any sector really, but try and help them to do exactly what you and I are talking about right now, finding the skills and finding almost your flow, and helping to see, is there other businesses, is there other opportunities? What do you do to help you personally? And then obviously from a business perspective through this COVID-19 crisis. And Teresa, you bringing up such an important point, because for me, the people cannot be disconnected from the crisis. And I found that so hard to sometimes bring across to, whether it is the finance director or the CEO, or whether it is the aid organizations, donor partners, because everybody's focusing on, and they should, on the health crisis, of course, and then on the economic crisis, and then on the social crisis, and then on the probably human rights crisis. But very few people are also focusing on the human crisis, the mental health and well-being of, whether it's the employee, the business owner. And I found so many business owners in the South Pacific, they had to do all these things, but they were suddenly overnight, their entire business was gone, because the tourism was gone.
Yeah.
So, I love what you're saying, because, what are your thoughts on that? Did you experience that in the same way here in South Africa? So just tell me a little bit more about that.
Wow. It's, well, I'll start with saying that obviously this has put everyone into stress. Mental health is huge. And where do you start? You have to start with yourself and a self-awareness of what's actually happening to you. You're a very active person and you're doing a lot of things, but a lot of other types would actually almost go into a frozen state. Yes. They've had to try and adjust to working on at home, maybe not having a job, maybe now having a house full of kids or what have you. It's massive stress for everyone.
Right.
And if you look at the divorce rates that have increased, if you look at the suicide levels that have increased, you can understand how crucial it is. The psychological effects and the damage of what has happened and still happening, we don't know what the effects of that. I think that's going to be the next pandemic, is people's mental health, and unpacking that, and then having to recover and go through a process of recovering. And my thing is just that, when I do my assessment, I really do a personality in 3 different frames. So, and those 3 frames are really, the first one is really about your perceived self, how you think you need to behave and how you behave with others. Right. The second style is really your intrinsic self. So really when you're behaving under stress, when you're under stress, so of any time. And those 2 frames can be the same, but often they're very different.
Yes.
And it's so important for you to know, when you're hiring someone, for instance, how they're behaving to you now. You see their CV, but you don't see how they're going to behave under stress. Exactly. And for you to be able to see that is incredible. Yeah. My training usually goes on, your perceived self, which is a mixture of both, but it's mostly of the first style. So it's how you are in your everyday life. Now, if you think people are in stress, they may be behaving completely different to what they usually do. And suddenly there's more misunderstandings, because now, people are like, I don't know you like this. I don't know you like that. I've never seen you under stress. If you take a lot of CEOs, they actually behave differently at work to what they do at home. Right. They can be really hard, driven, under a lot of intense concentration in the office. Right. But they come home to their wife, they kiss the wife, they're great with the kids, And it's wonderful that they can adjust.
Yeah.
But now think of the change of now they're not at work anymore. They're owning home
Yeah.
and they need to get their job done. Just think of the
Yeah.
family who now sees them like they haven't seen them like that before.
Mm.
So there's a huge adjustment for the whole family.
Interesting.
Of how do you now suddenly have this one persona of, and never mind, you know, your space, but trying to be in your work mode and your work brain, as well as being at home with the family. So I think that is really, really difficult. And I think the other thing is how people behave under stress. And let's face it, 99% of every single person is under some form of stress at the moment. And it's, you know, on the one hand, you have to start thinking about how am I going to motivate these people to get back to work? When businesses open, how are we going to deal with everyone? You know, and for me, I think starting with a self-awareness so that everyone understands where they are is a great way to motivate people, because you know, you have to have empathy. You have to be understanding about what's happening and how people are feeling and what they're going through. But you also need the job done. Yeah. So how do you get the job done, motivate them, and have empathy at the same time? So that is for leaders, managers, for parents, for, you know, for anyone really in any relationship, is understanding how do I get done what I need to get done, communicate with people around me, and how do I deal with my stress in the best way that is for me, and then dealing with others' stress. What is the best way of helping them and supporting them? Because again, it's not one size fits all. It's very different for different people. You know, as you say, some people are finding it stressful that they don't see their friends. They're used to going out, having fun, seeing friends. And I think for a lot of teenagers, probably it's more difficult for them than for anyone. Whereas other people are more stressed just about the change. They like a steady environment. Suddenly now everything's changed and they're working from home. So that big change is stressful for them. Whereas other people, it's the control, that they like to have control. They need to know they've got control. Things are happening according to plan. Well, that's gone out the window as well, because you can't plan for anything. So if you look at all the different styles, everybody for their own direct personality style is going through the pain of not, you know, of having to deal with stress in a way that affects them directly.
Wow. Yeah. I mean, that is spot on. And I'm so glad you're bringing it up, because the more we get to talk about the critical challenges that COVID is presenting, and I agree with you, I think the whole emotional health and well-being, people's emotional state and people's mental state, we are only now starting to see that tip of the iceberg emerging. There is going to be months and years of work that's now lying ahead of us as people slowly start coming out of this crisis, people slowly start getting back to work, people start to, you know, economies are slowly starting, the vaccines are happening. So it's now starting to open up, and people are journeying back into the workplaces and back into society. But mentally, the scars that we are carrying and that baggage of what has happened, we are only going to start seeing it now. And this is why what we are doing and the beautiful tips and resources and insights that you are sharing, Teresa, is critical, because if we start putting it on the table more, we are just bombarding the social media and mainstream media with the fact that, hey man, it's okay to not be okay right now. Let's talk about mental health and well-being. Let's put it on the table. You are not the only one, you know. And that I'm thanking COVID for that, because before this, we wouldn't have even been able to touch on some of these subjects that we are talking about during this crucial COVID conversations. Never mind, you know, mental health and well-being, but let's look at diversity. Let's look at inclusion. Let's look at conservation, climate change. You know, suddenly we've been given this platform. And I'm glad we can, you know, use it and at least start talking about these things more. But mental health and wellness for me, like you, is critical, because I honestly believe that nothing else is going to work and nothing else is going to be okay unless we look after not just our own, but the people that we're responsible for. our immediate family, our inner circle, and then the people we manage or the people that we work with. You know, we've got to start changing that culture to make it okay for us to talk about this. And hopefully COVID, you know, is helping us to do that. And maybe that's one good thing. Okay, there are a few, but at least one that's coming from this, right?
No, absolutely.
So go ahead.
Now, I was just going to say, you know, the stress is, you know, that's giving you an example of how that affects personalities. But, you know, you can go into this at so many different levels, even in terms of people's values. You know, by me understanding what your value system is and you understanding what your team's value systems are, you understand where their decisions are made and why they make certain decisions. You just learn about yourself so much more, that you understand when you get annoyed or ticked off, you know exactly what it is, so that you can get out of that mode and say, okay, I understand why it is. You're not taking it personally. You know that it's not a personal and direct attack on you. And if it is, you will understand how to respond to that person. But it just elevates your, you know, the person you are, because you're in a much more positive and confident state of mind. And that affects everybody's everyday life, whether you're at work or home, you know. So, and I love that part of it as well, is that the confidence that rises in people, you see them smiling more because they really understand where it's coming from and how it's happening. Suddenly they're looking at this side, I understand what's happening to me, why I'm feeling like this, why that person,
powerful.
You know, like why are we connecting or why we're not. And if you're not, it's actually also okay. You don't have to connect with every person.
That's great, because now you're bringing up another interesting tidbit that we should unpack, because this is all about conversation, and Crucial COVID Conversations is about those little tidbits as well, because what you're saying is absolutely valuable. And this is interesting because when we now talk about what the aftermath, and we're not even actually really probably we're still in it, never mind the aftermath of the COVID crisis. Values is important, you're right, because not just from a personal perspective, but also those corporate values, those company organizational values. And the interesting thing is, and I'm sure you and I are going to agree on this, but you can't use your pre-COVID values and strategic vision and goals, because things have changed. And this is why it's so important for companies to take that moment to pause and to say, hey, even if we do an interim strategy, vision, goals, whatever, for the next 12 or 18 months, let's do it now. Because if we don't, we're going to continue to disconnect further and further about what we want to achieve from an organizational perspective, and also what our people are experiencing, what our informal culture and our values are during this crisis, because we have to continue to move those two closer and closer together. And pre-COVID values and culture is not the same as it is right now. It doesn't mean we won't get there again, but hopefully we'll get there. It will be a completely new dynamic, and it will be different. But that brings me to fear and change. And I'm sure you do wonderful stuff on that as well. And I'm sorry, we're not really talking about the questions, but I think we're answering the questions in any case. So I want to just hear this, and then I'm going to ask you the first question I should have asked you, but let's get back to that in a second.
Yeah, you know, dealing with fears. This work, there are many people that are a little bit hesitant. You know, what are you going to find out about me that I don't want anyone else to know? Yeah, it can come out like that, but it's not about that. It's really, what I do is I work with your observable behavior. It's not a psychological assessment. It's not an intellectual assessment. This is working with your observable behavior. But by other people knowing what your fears are, it immediately sort of opens up the communication. Because if you get irritated or annoyed, or you're angry, or you're behaving in a negative sort of way, you can immediately say, what is this person's fear? What have I done that's touched that fear button that I'm getting this reaction? And if you know what they are, then you can respond in the appropriate way. And again, what I do in my workshops is, it's not only about your own self-awareness that I teach you about the fundamentals of the other styles, so that you it's like learning a new language, but you learn the others' languages as well. So that even though I understand what I'm about now, I understand how that interacts with others. And the fears, people obviously, there's all different fears. And, it's not a case of just dividing this into 4 sort of primary styles, because it's, you slice and dice it to such a form that it's actually as unique as your fingerprint. So by the time you've got your assessment, it is so, so unique to you. And when you understand and value what your uniqueness is, you kind of, it gives you this hope of, that's where I want to be. I want to always be working in my strengths.
Aspiration,
Understand what my fears are. And, if you've got a mix of a few personalities, well, then you take in the strengths of those, but you also take in the fears of those. So maybe you're a person that has more fears than others. So for me, it's not about finding out anything about you that isn't observable to everybody else. It's just about showing them so that they understand it from a different perspective. If you take bits of personalities as well, it's not an even split amongst the population.
Exactly.
The sort of the dominant style only makes up 3% of the population. And if you think what that means to those dominant styles, is that like attracts like. So in other words, if you're in that 3% dominant style, it's only really 3% of people that you're really
going to be relating.
So think how difficult it is for that style.
That is a great statistic. I love that. I didn't know that. And that is so interesting. Wow. Okay.
And then you have the next style is the I style. So that's the influencing style.
Yes.
The influencers are great motivators, great speakers. They make up 11% of the population. So, again, that's a little bit broader, but I think the area that I like to concentrate on is the S style. It's the steady and the stable style. The people that really don't enjoy change, because look what's happened during COVID. They make up 69% of the population. So if you think that you can treat everybody the same, it's not going to work, especially if you're not keeping that 69% of the population or your workforce happy. So it's important that you understand that you want to treat people, even if they are in a company or in a team, you want to treat them like individuals, because that way you're going to get so much more out of them. Yeah.
That is fascinating. And I thank you for sharing that, because it just reiterates not just the fact that we need to adjust and change, and we need to be resilient and all of those things, but it just also confirms what we've just said, that 69%, that the big chunk of our colleagues, our people, even if we are like that out there, those are the people that don't like what we're going through right now in terms of this COVID crisis, because there is uncertainty, there is change, and my goodness, that's going to be a perfect conundrum for us to manage and for us to work with as things evolve. And awesome for you for sharing that. I think a lot of people will find that not just super interesting, but will also take great pause and say, okay, well, how do I move forward, not just personally, but also in my workplace, with my colleagues from a management perspective. We have a lot of people that's business owners that listen to this in terms of how do I reframe my thinking, and how do I catch those people, that chunk of people, that big group that may not be the way that I think or I reason through, but we have to look after them. We want to make sure that we guide them and help them through this crisis. Wow, that is so interesting. Teresa, thank you for sharing that. Okay, now I want to know who you are and what gets you out of bed every day after all of that.
I think when I started my own business with this work as a behavioral analyst in business perspectives, I had been working with this work for, as I say, the last 10 years, and I just saw such incredible potential with just the need of this. And when COVID happened, I thought if ever there was a time for this to work, it's now. So I literally left a job that I had been in for 30 years with the same company, the most incredible people that I worked with. And I just felt it's time. And what gets me out of bed is really how excited I am about helping people, how I really want to create my own life now. And, a sort of future for myself and my children and my little grandson. I've
Mm.
just put my head down in the corporate world for too long, where, you know, nights goes into mornings, into afternoons. It was all about work, always. And I just felt at this stage of my life, I want to create my own little life, my future, my life with my children. I want to give back to my kids. My kids all know this work so well as well. And I want to give back to the corporate world. I mean, I understand the corporate world so well. And I understand people. And I want to really just share what I know for others to see, you know, empower people. So, I'm generally excited about life itself, Belinda, because I can see in myself how this worked helped me. So I don't often take things personally, but I'm excited about life in general. Even with COVID, we are going to get out of this. We are going to see the end of this. And a lot of people are going to be changed through this. So if you, whatever company you've been working for, they better be ready for the new you when you get back to the office, because that's going to be the next challenge. Yeah.
Oh, wow. Yeah, that is powerful. First of all, I got goosebumps when you were talking about your, you know, your personal journey and your transition and your change, and how you got to a stage where you want to do more, you want to give back in a different capacity, and you want to help. And I personally can identify so much with that, and it's just beautiful to hear you verbalize that. And I think I want to acknowledge that, because for various reasons, Teresa, not only do I certainly value and appreciate and respect you stepping away and redesigning your life, because I myself have been there quite a few times, and yet here we find ourselves again in the same situation. But I want to acknowledge that, and I want to thank you for doing that, because I don't even know sometimes if when you're in it, do you understand how you are touching people's lives, and how by you yourself stopping, pausing, taking a step back and realigning all that energy and everything that flows with you now, you are making such an important difference. And you are also being a voice for people doing those career changes, which I'm also always such a firm believer in. And I want to applaud you for that, because the more we start talking about this, and you were saying earlier about people, you know, you have to do a couple of side hustles, you have to do so many different things to be able to just be that resilient self and pick up on the opportunities and being successful now. But the more people like you do that, and the more people like you talk about it's okay and it's going to be okay, and following your passion and your heart and making a difference, because you know what, each one of us can, and we should all try. I mean, you are the personification of that, and I love that, and I want to acknowledge that, and I want to thank you for that, because you are making a difference. And even our conversation right now, the people that we'll be reaching out to, people are going to listen to this and they're going to say, oh, I just needed to hear that coming from Teresa. I needed to hear that to give me the strength and the motivation to perhaps step out of this and step into a different direction. And it doesn't mean we all need to leave corporate and, you know, do our own thing, because it's not going to work like that. But it does mean you have to be the best you can in your environment, right?
Absolutely. And it's not easy to make a career change. And when I sat down and thought about it, I thought, I am so lucky that I'm a person that loves a lot of interest. You know, through my yoga, as you say, we did our teachers yoga. I could have done something there. Through this disc work, which has just been phenomenal work that I've done on that. I've just met so many new people. And when I see the response, it was just so rewarding to see people say, oh, I really love this work. Thank you for doing this. You know, seeing people, when I work with conflict management, seeing people in massive conflict that cannot get along together or cannot work together, just showing them how they need to be communicating to each other and why, resolves the issues immediately. So I was so passionate about that. And I just really felt, you know, you just know when it's time. And I did take a big leap of faith, you know, leaving in the start of the pandemic. But I cannot tell you how much more fulfilled I feel, that I'm giving more.
Yes.
You know, than receiving a salary every month. I'm actually giving more to people and
Yeah.
And I'm working with people's development in the people that they are, and self-awareness and what have you. So,
yeah. And isn't
very
that,
rewarding.
yeah, exactly. I was just going to say, isn't that so much more rewarding? And I just want to quickly touch on something else that I've just started to unpack in the last few Crucial COVID conversations, because I am now in this beautiful position that I'm starting to pick up, I like to say DNA, little blueprint for, people that, that really, and embraces the terrible word, given that there are so many people that have had devastating effects of COVID, whether it's from a health perspective, losing loved ones, businesses. I'm not disrespecting that, but I'm saying embracing the changes and really understanding that, okay, through challenges and through this crisis, there is also opportunity. And there are a couple of things that I've picked up from the people that I've been talking to, and you are exactly that as well. It's that positivity, that passion, that resilience, and the people that are honestly okay to do, they believe enough in themselves, and they believe that things will work out well, and they are taking that leap of faith, which is exactly what you've done as well, which is a kind of a common trend that I'm starting to pick up from the people that I'm talking to, which is fabulous, because it shows us that, and these are behaviors that you can change. It doesn't mean, of course, our personality is who we are, but we can change our behavior, and realigning to start focusing on some of these skill sets, being more resilient, being more open to listening, communicating, understanding, just making that internal change and shift. Those are the things that we can control, and that we can change. And hearing you say that, and picking up on some of the other common traits and even frame of references, it's just beautiful to have. So I want to thank you for bringing that up. My next question now is two more questions, really, that's more formal, and then we'll wrap up with some other informal stuff. But tell me, what did you learn? What did you learn, Teresa, from 2020?
From 2020, I think the biggest lesson is something had to change. And I feel that the biggest lesson I earned was it's worth taking a risk. Like I became braver. And I feel like in a lot of different ways, things that I wouldn't have done before, I've done now. So I feel it's made me braver. And I kind of feel sometimes that I won't say I'm fearless, but after what we've gone through now, it's like how much worse can things be? Because things are really, really bad. I mean, we're getting used to this now. It's kind of become our new norm, but it's very far from normal.
Yeah,
very far. And I'm hoping things don't go back. I don't think things will go back after this. I think it's going to be much better after this, because everyone's had a little inside awakening. I mean, I've cared more about others, and people that I've known, that I've worked with, my customers, whatever. It's really made me think about how are they. I wonder how they're coping in their personality style, or the person that they are. I think it's actually done a lot of good to me personally, because, as I say, it made me think more. I'm not the personality that thinks more. I'm more of a doer. So it's given me time, and I'm a single person, so I live on my own. I've spent a lot of time on my own, and at first that was quite terrifying for me, thinking, how am I going to be on my own and not go out at all and mix with my friends and see people? And so I think that experience is actually kind of, it wakes you up a little bit, So my lesson,
wow,
I've learned to be braver, and I think my empathy levels have increased.
Oh, wow. That's amazing. How that's powerful. Hey, and thank you for sharing that, first of all, because again, the more we talk about it, the more people we share how we not only coping with the crisis, but the crisis itself and our emotional well-being and our journey. So thank you for sharing that. And it's interesting because I love bravery. So by the way, this is the first time somebody has put it on the table. And if there is a buzzword that I want to take away from this, is bravery, because that's just beautiful. And you've said it so eloquently. And I hear you, and I think perhaps there are so many other people that now, having gone through this crisis, feels that, you know, I never thought I could. And maybe we're not quite through yet, but I have learned these coping mechanisms and these skills that will help me deal with, you know, pretty much anything. You know, what else can be thrown at us now? Maybe let's not tempt fate, but you know, it does give us that beautiful reflection and the time to pause. Hey, and I loved what you said earlier, and this is also another thing that almost without exception people have shared, and that is two things. We are really all in this together across the globe. We have felt this common enemy, and we stood together for the most part to fight this, you know, unseen enemy, which is beautiful. And I think, but also the pause has given us time to stop, you know, think and reflect, and also the time to realize that there is perhaps a bigger reason why we are where we are, and let's not go back to where we were. Let's make the changes and the choices within ourselves, that let's not focus on the same things. Let's focus on the stuff that's better for us as people, that's better for our environment, that's better for us getting along, that's better for our mental health and well-being, that's better for the world and the survival of us as a species. You know, let's hope this pause has given us, and I also want to kind of imprint on people that it is going to be up to each one of us individually to make those choices moving forward. You know, our brains has expanded now. We can never go back to who we were. So let's make sure that we don't make the same choices. Let's take the time to make better choices moving forward, right? I mean, what are your thoughts on that?
And I hope that companies, as you know, people start going back to work, I hope that companies will regroup their teams and really just spend that little bit of time to find out about the mental health, find out how they're doing, how can they motivate those people, make that their priority before they start thinking about the bottom line is quick, we have to make money. If their team are happy, they're going to be so much more productive. And it's a far more, I think, important step is to just regroup everyone together and say, okay, this is where we are, guys. How are all of you? How are we going to make sure that we now move forward together? What's changed within us? You know, talk about those things where companies don't normally speak about that.
Love
What's
that.
changed? How are you all feeling? And then move forward. And I think that will make a fundamental, it will save you a lot of time, because going along, people are going to go through, I think, a recovery mode. It's like, as I say, we don't know the psychological effects, what they are and what they're going to be. But at least if you start somewhere where you open the doors of communication, where people feel safe to actually talk about it, it's going to make for, I think, a much easier process than just try and get people to, okay, guys, we're back at work at normal. Let's get going and let's get the business running. Because, you know, business owners also need the business to function. But you want to fire in all cylinders, you know, not just driving it forward.
I think that is probably one of the most valuable things that I've heard in a while. I mean, it is great. And I hope our business owners and the people that have influence in organizations actually do this, because I think it's a fabulous suggestion. And I think we should all embrace it, because you are right. I mean, otherwise, if we don't put it out on the table, if we just start focusing on outputs and, you know, we're going to leave our people behind, and it's going to come back and bite us in the butt with a force, because then suddenly we have to deal with it. Where if it's done right from the get-go, we can start getting a feeling on it, we can start providing assistance and help, and we can start realigning. And we know these are the challenges, but if we ignore it, it's going to come back, like it always does when it comes to people and issues, right?
Exactly.
Right.
Yeah.
So what tidbits do you have? What can you share with us that is going to help us stay focused and motivated in 2021? And can you believe we are halfway through March already? But yes.
I believe it.
Yeah.
I would say, just from the work I do at TMR, so the TMR consulting is after my initials, Teresa Maria Richardson, but it also stands for the Me Reworked. And it really is just about working on yourself, You know, before you worry about everyone around you, work on yourself, get to understand yourself. That is not the easiest process if you don't have a process to follow. But this is such a wonderful process to follow. And I just think if you can understand yourself, you'll have a lot more empathy for others. You'll attract more people. You'll have more friends for sure. You'll be more understood.
Yeah.
And you'll just have a happier life, you know, like
Yeah.
getting on with people wherever you are, whatever type of job you do, you're going to have people around you. And by just having that awareness of this is who I am, I understand now why I don't enjoy that person, but I can also appreciate this, that, and the other about that person, you know. Understanding, we do something really interesting in our workshop, and it's called the Johari window. I'm sure you must have heard about this.
I love the Johari window, so talk away.
Exactly, yeah. We've got a few minutes left, but I'll just say that the Johari window is really about identifying your blind spots. And everybody has blind spots. And you know what? Most people will know your blind spot, and they'll never say anything to you, either because they don't want to offend you, or they don't want to lose you as a friend, or they just can't deal with confrontation. But think how important and useful it is for you to know what your blind spots are, how that can help you in your development. And I think that is so important in the gentlest, kindest way for those to be revealed. I think is a brilliant way, a brilliant place to start, is to say, okay, I didn't realize this about myself. And you know, it could be that you talk over somebody, or that, you know, you never listen to somebody, and you know, or whatever it is. It can be a multitude of things. But by just revealing those things that you're not really aware of is just so important to know. So I think, I think going forward, inner awareness, self-awareness is so important. And you know, I now know what my values are. I know what my strengths are. I know what my weaknesses are. And I know how I need to keep myself in the strength of my personality so that I have a happier life going forward, you know. I think more, that's more important to me than anything.
Yeah. That, I mean, spot on. I couldn't agree more. Thank you, Teresa, so much for sharing those insights, and you're sharing your personal story as well, which is super motivating to start off with. And I loved hearing that about your journey, and I loved hearing how you embraced the change, and your tenacity and resilience just shines through, and your positivity. And I am sure that our paths will cross again in many ways, specifically as it pertains to the friendship, but also for the business. Well, I think I see lots of opportunities for us to reconnect and do some cool stuff together. So, you know, where do people find you? I mean, I want to know all about that, because I want to make sure that people have the opportunity, whether you're a business owner or whether you're just want to learn more about the key learnings in terms of what you do, and how implement that in their personal life. So where do we find you? Tell us.
Well, you can visit my website, and my website is tmreworked.com. I'm updating that all the time, but there's a lot of information on there. You can get hold of me there, or you can send me an email at Teresa, Teresa, at tmrework.com. And I'm always keen to, you know, whether it's a personal team, whether it's a personal relationship, business relationship, you know, team building, whatever, I'm always keen to even just listen to what you need, and I can tailor make things around that as well. So happy to dive in.
That's one. Oh, I love that part in the pun. Happy to dive in. I mean, I think that was just done for me, right? Love it. That is amazing, and I am I'm so honored to have had you join my Crucial COVID Conversations. It's been fabulous. And I am also going to make sure that we share, once we launch and we premiere, I'll make sure I share all the connection points so people can to find you, touch base with you, hear more about what you do, and even connect with you. So thank you so much, Teresa, for this wonderful opportunity.
Thank you. No, it's been a great pleasure. Thank you so much. Thanks, Belinda. I hope to see you again.
Absolutely. Take care and enjoy Cape Town today.
Well, thanks.